The Ryan Tubridy Show on RTE Radio 1. Sponsored by Sky Broadband. Get the power to do more with Sky's best ever Wi-Fi.
Bang on 9:27 this Wednesday morning, and we're going to go live to New York City to a man with quite a story to tell. So let's say hello to you, Michael Dowling. What a pleasure to welcome you to the show. Good morning, Michael.
Oh, good morning. Delighted to be able to talk to you. Sure. Thank you so much.
Not at all. Michael, we're going to go straight back in time to Limerick, some 60 years ago, thereabouts, where you were a young boy. Could you paint a picture for us, Michael, of life? Where were you and what it was like?
Well, I was in West Limerick in a village called Knockaderry, a beautiful, picturesque place. I was obviously very agrarian. We lived in a home that didn't have a lot of the amenities that people today consider normal. It was, it was pretty big, a rough environment. A lot of poverty in the neighborhood. I had my parents, of course, and there were five of us. I'm the oldest. We lived in one of those thatched homes, without running water, bathrooms, heat, electricity, etc. At one hand, everybody in the neighborhood helped everybody else. On the other hand, it was, pretty depressing, in terms of opportunities for the future. And as a kid, I always wanted to believe that there was something, better, outside in the broader world. And I dreamed about going to college. I loved education. My mother always made available to me books to read, so I was a ferocious reader, which I still am. And, I went to a local, primary school, obviously, cycled to a village a town about 5 miles away to go to secondary school. Mm-hmm. But there were very few opportunities for young people back then, other than helping to milk cows for local neighbours. And so I decided to leave and go to England. And then eventually to the US when I was 18.
Exactly. I don't want you to run ahead of me now, Michael, because I'm intrigued by your time there in Limerick. And you describe a certain level of poverty in terms of financial poverty, but you were rich in the world that your mother provided you vis-a-vis books and education, and she was obviously a very inspired person.
Yeah, she was an extraordinary individual, and quite frankly, pretty much everything that I have ever achieved since then has been in a major part the result of her influence. Very, important in promoting and inspiring me. She always said that you never, she said many, many times in different words, of course, but she said, don't ever let your circumstance impede your potential. Mm. And because she made available books to me all the time, I got a good view of what potentially existed outside of Knockaderry. I still love the place. When I go to Ireland, I always go back to Knockaderry. It's a wonderful village, but at that time, it didn't have the opportunities.
And was your mother profoundly deaf, or was she mildly deaf, or how would you describe her?
She was pretty much completely deaf. She lost her hearing when she was, around 10 or 11. There are various views of why she lost her hearing. But she never, ever let her hearing be a handicap. She never admitted it was a handicap. She lip read. She was able to, if she watched you, she could hear you. Mm. But if she wasn't looking at you, you could make all the noise in the world and she could never hear. So she was pretty much completely deaf. And
your father had severe arthritis?
Yeah, he was very seriously disabled with arthritis, and after about the age of 42, he could not work anymore.
And how did you marry the kind of battling will for you in terms of your mother saying education, 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 go forth and be brilliant, and your father who appeared to have a more sceptical approach to education?
Well, I listened to my mother. And you have to dream.
Yeah.
And, the power of dreams is important. to understand that there are other potential possibilities out there, other opportunities. And so my mother's influence went out easily.
We're going to get.
I also felt I had a responsibility since I was the oldest of the family.
Of course, I really want to get to the American side of your story because it just gets bigger and better as we move along. But I was so struck by the moment when, and it's such an Irish moment, and this is when, I think we compare our country's attitude to ambition, and I want to talk about that later too, to ambition and to positivity to an extent. And other people's achievements. We have a very comfortable relationship, I think, sometimes with other people doing well in life. But we'll get there in a second. A rich local farmer turns around to you as a young man and says, "Isn't it too bad you will never be able to get to college?"
Probably the most motivating statement that was ever mentioned to me. He was Mr. Sullivan. Did not live that far away from us, had a farm. And I was there one evening to get milk, and his son was thinking of going to college and preparing to go to college, and he turned to me and made that statement. And I remember walking away thinking, I'm going to college. I'm going to college. So in many ways, I thank him.
Yes.
At the time, I was upset, but when you look back on hindsight, it was a very motivating statement. It pushed me to decide that yes, nobody's going to tell me what I can't do.
You went to the UK and you made money. You sent it back and so forth. But and that was so important to keep the family finances in check and buoyant. But I suppose to continue the story about you being driven, you go to college ultimately, University College Cork, and it's a first for your family. But it also allowed you then to sort out. In advance of that, a J1 visa, and you go to New York City, and that would change your life.
That was an absolutely major change, yes. I remember being in Manhattan looking around and thinking, oh my God, there are things you can do here. It's the American experience. It's America is a wonderful place and always has been. My story is an immigrant story in the United States is the history of immigration. And so, yes, it allowed me to make enough money so I could pay my way through college, help out at home, and then continue my education. You
worked on the docks, in engine rooms of the Circle Line tour boats, in construction. You were a plumber. You cleaned out bars in the early mornings hours. You did all the things that most of us would have kind of done in the early years to try and make a book and so on. But these are the jobs that really do inform you as a human being later in life, I think, when you do achieve where you want to be.
Well, every job is an education. Yes. So everything you do teaches you something. You learn. There's no such thing as a bad job, in my view. All jobs have wonderful potential if you look at it and have the right perspective.
So after you graduated from UCC for 4 years, you went back to New York. Can you give us a kind of a nutshell career path as to where you went? What did you graduate in or as, and what did you do when you got to New York?
Well, after I came back after college, I continued to work in construction and on the docks for a while, and then I went to Fordham University. I ended up getting a master's degree in public welfare, social services. I was asked to teach a course in college after I graduated, which I gladly did. And then I was asked to teach 2 courses, and within a couple of years, they asked me to come on full-time and teach, and which I did. I ended up on faculty full-time, ended up as the assistant dean of Fordham University Graduate School. And then they had a campus in Westchester, north of New York City, and they asked me to head up that campus, which I did. And the lesson here is whenever an opportunity opens up or a door opens up, you just take it. You say yes, and you never know what's going to happen when those opportunities arise if you say yes to them. I then was at Fordham University for a number of years when Governor Mario Cuomo became governor of the state of New York. He is the father of the current governor. They reached out to me, his administration did, asking if I was interested in the position in government. I said yes. I took a position in Albany, this capital of New York State. I did not know the governor at that time, had never met him until I started working there. And then within a couple of years, I continually got promoted. I ended up being the head of Health and Human Services of the state of New York and the top advisor to the governor on all health and human services. And I worked for him for about 12 years.
Right, massive. I mean, we've come a long way from the thatched cottage in Limerick at this point.
Yeah, I actually I built a model of where I grew up in Limerick. I have the model of the house here in my house here in New York. And I look at it ever so often and I say, I'm very lucky. I'm very fortunate. It's a long way, but then again, the grounding that I got in Knockaderry also is helped. Poverty and deprivation can be a wonderful, wonderful motivator. And you never play victim. You never basically say, I can't do something. And my family is still back in Knockaderry. My sister is still back in Knockaderry. And by the way, I just want to say to my sister Mary, she is back in Knockaderry. I believe she might be listening to this, but today is her birthday, so I wish her a happy birthday.
And a very happy birthday indeed to Mary, your sister. So you are now, I'm leapfrogging a little bit because you got into the hospital business and you became the main man. You're the boss of Northwell Health. You own it, I presume, do you?
Well, it's a large not-for-profit organization, and I came in when there were two hospitals at the very, very beginning after I left government. And I was recruited to come and become the operating officer of one of the very large hospitals here in New York. And then we started to grow and build. And today we are the largest healthcare provider in the state of New York and the largest private employer in the state of New York.
You've 75,000 employees, 23 hospitals and 800 outpatient locations throughout the New York metropolitan area. That is a massive achievement. And yet I love this idea that you might hire 200 people a week, or I think it is, and you make it your business to, as the CEO, to address them, to be there in person.
Yeah, well, organizations are all about the people. And the people aspect of every business is the most important in my view. So yes, for the last 21 years, every new employee that is hired, irrespective of circumstance or position or job, I meet with them and I spend 2 to 3 hours with them every Monday morning. I think that's important. I think that's what leadership should do. I give them the background, the culture, the history, the expectations of the organization. And each and every day I spend time walking the front lines of the organization. And I did it also during COVID. As you know, we were at the epicenter of COVID here. Mm-hmm. But yes, the employees are the key to any organization, and they're the ones that you have to take special care of.
And do you believe that the healthcare workers are another breed entirely?
Well, healthcare workers to me are a unique breed. They're special people. They have true character. And that's true worldwide. It's the same in Ireland, and I've spent a lot of time with many of the hospitals in Ireland over the years. And during COVID, they have demonstrated their true character. Exceptional people who can do exceptional work and do exceptional work each and every day. So we should all feel very, very thankful to know healthcare people, especially the frontline workers like nurses, doctors, respiratory therapists especially. And
are you still working with the governor, the current Como running New York?
Yes, I have been very close to him for many, many, many years. I work with him very closely all during the COVID crisis. And of course, these days we are involved with the vaccination issue. So yes, I do work with him on an ongoing basis. We connect regularly. And I try to get involved to the extent that I possibly can, because I think if you're a leader in any large organization, you have a responsibility and obligation to use your influence to impact the community in a positive way, and to take on other issues and do as much as you possibly can to make life a better place for others.
I'll mention it briefly, but we don't need to get into it in any great deal. But Donald Trump's handling of the COVID crisis, in a few words, Michael.
Well, Donald Trump to me is a stain on American history. I mean, he was an absolute disaster as a president. Had very little leadership ability, in my view, and I it will take the United States quite a while to get over the disaster, the disunity, the division, the hate that he created. I just think that he'll be eventually put in the dustbin of history. I'm never a fan, as obviously it's clear from what I just said.
And yet half the population voted for him.
Yes, and I know people that voted for him. It's depressing, to be honest. Leadership is about building trust. It's about unifying people, about setting a positive direction. It's about hope and possibility. And he did the very opposite. Yes, but he does have 60 to 70 million supporters, and many of them are still out there. And he will, obviously have influence for quite a while, even though he's no longer in the White House. And I just think that the good people like the current president and others, will have to, persist to make sure that we can get that sense of unity back and a sense of hope back. And while I look at the past couple of years as an aberration, and I'm looking forward with hope to the future.
We talk about the Cuomos and the Dowlings and the Bidens and indeed the German Trumps. America's story is that of an international goulash of ingredients, is it not?
Absolutely. United States has had wonderful leadership role in the world, and I think it needs to assume that role again. We're all part of one community. We're in a very interconnected world, and you need leaders that actually are able to promote the unity for the public good overall, not just in your own country, but worldwide. And I do believe that President Biden will assume that mantle as he has over the years in his career. And I think going forward, if we're all positive and upbeat and we all play our role and we all try to make our influence felt positively in our neighborhood and our communities, I think that we can leave our kids something better at the end of the day. We have to give oxygen to hope and possibility.
That's a lovely expression, giving oxygen to hope. I love that because I would concur with that entirely. But sometimes, Michael, and particularly as we speak this Wednesday morning, whatever we're on, the 17th of February, for whatever reason, this week, the last week, and maybe the next week or two, we find ourselves as a country quite jaded and a little fed up and just feeling that the 5-kilometre hamster wheel of repetition, and that's one thing. Then you've got families who might be in a flat or an apartment, and they might have families with kids with who aren't well, and just the struggle. You know what I'm talking about. What do you say to people listening this morning who just can't quite get a handle on the hope, can't quite grasp the sense of optimism, and see the cavalry coming?
I would say don't give up. Optimism is important. You go through tough times, you go through difficult times, as everybody's going through right now with COVID, but it will end. There is a brighter future ahead. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. So whenever you're down or you don't see the possibilities, I would say kind of sit back and put it in perspective a little bit. But don't play victim. Think of what it is you can possibly do if you have a positive attitude. Positive attitude and optimism to me is unbelievably important. And dream. Just because you don't let failure intimidate. You look beyond it. So I would say to people, it's a good world overall. There are good people. There are people trying to make a positive difference and become part of the solution. Be optimistic.
Yeah. It's refreshing actually. I see the text saying there coming in from Margaret Stafford in Wexford. It's so refreshing to hear this interview. Michael proves what it means to never lose sight of where you come from. In New York, Michael, one of the most, and I go every time I visit that beautiful city, the Famine Memorial.
Yes.
It is such a striking piece between skyscrapers. This chunk of Ireland is extraordinary.
It's extra, and that's important perspective because no matter how bad you think you're having it today, there have been worse times. people have gone through very difficult circumstances. So sometimes you look at your own circumstances and say, oh boy, look how bad this is. It could never get worse. And then if you know a little bit of history, you think of people back then in the coffin ships coming from Ireland, taking months to get here. So we think our situation right now is that difficult. Think of those situations. Yeah. Families locked in the hull of a boat, coming all the way across the United States, getting here and making a new life. So perspective is important. People get through these things.
Indeed.
And there is a better future at the end. So that's, I think, what people got to keep thinking all the time. And I know right now, especially with COVID and in Ireland, you can only travel, 5 kilometers from your house, and you have to wear a mask, and you have the social distance. We do the same over here with regard to mask wearing and other things. And people say, oh, life is very, very terrible. This is a minor inconvenience compared to what other people have done over history. And a minor inconvenience in comparison to what other Irish people have done over history. So put it all in perspective. We are in many ways quite lucky. But we just have to have that common ongoing sense of positivity and optimism.
You're getting pressing all the right buttons, I'm glad to say, for our listeners this morning. Thecla McLaughlin in Drummond says, wonderful interview, truly inspiring, and a great man. And Mag says, this is a great interview with Michael. He sounds like a great man. So proud he came from Ireland. I'm loving it. And delighted to hear Michael Dowling on RT. I had the pleasure of hearing him speaking in Derry a couple of years ago. And another said, you remember that? I read Michael's book.
Oh, yeah, sure. That was wonderful. Unbelievably hospitable people. I remember it very well. They were so kind. And, I love going to Ireland, and I love participating over there. I just think, every nationality have great attributes. I think the Irish are the best.
Well, obviously. So proud to, obviously. I mean, you're not biased at all, which is great.
Absolutely not biased at all. I think that we have that inherent optimism, I think, that can sustain over any difficulty.
So proud to be a Limerick woman, says Mary, listening to Michael, a wonderful man, giving us all hope in a truly practical and enlightened way, and never forgetting his humble beginnings. Well done. I often listen.
Yeah, and I also want to say thanks to, best wishes to the rest of my family over there. Sure. All great, and I am in many ways very, very, very fortunate and very lucky.
Nuala wants to know, how did the farmer's son get on?
We became friends. He actually went to college. He did take longer than I to graduate. And we played hurling together, because I did play hurling with UCC and with Limerick at one point. But we became friends, and I never held anything against the family or against the father. As I said earlier, he motivated me.
Yes.
Sometimes a negative statement can be a wonderful motivator.
Yeah.
If you look at it the right way.
Yeah, so true.
I was determined more than ever after that incident. I was more determined than ever to go to college. And I ended up getting to college.
You sure did. I think you like so many Irish who move away for however long, when they call home, their accent gets stronger and more Irish the longer the phone call continues. And I think you're gone full Limerick now on me.
Well, thank you. I still have my accent has changed a little bit over the years, of course, but I'm Irish and I'm American. I'm Irish American, and there could not be a better combination.
It's been a real pleasure talking to you, Michael, I have to say, and appreciate your time and your sentiments this morning. As someone said, Angela says, that man should be President of the United States. He's given me great hope today. Another says, the neighbour tried to box him in, but Michael did not let him, and to determine his future. And somebody else says, I often see Michael on CNBC, especially during the COVID crisis. He lives the positive community values that we in Ireland hold dear. So I'm proud to see an Irish person do so well in the US as Eamon in Cork. So listen, Michael, we'll talk to you in real life on the other side. But in the meantime, to you and your family, best wishes, and thank you for your time this morning.
Well, I thank you so much. This is a real pleasure. Likewise. And I would love to meet in person when I come to Ireland, which I hope, by the way, will be pretty soon.
Here's hoping. No doubt about it. Michael, thank you for your time. Best of luck with everything.
Thank you so much.
All right, that's Michael Dowling. Fascinating man, I have to say. He's written a memoir. A lot of people have read it and have said they've enjoyed it tremendously. It's written in this morning. It's called After the Roof Caved In, an immigrant's journey from Ireland to America. And congratulations to him on that. But that is Michael Dowling, CEO of Northwell Health. And as I say, that's a big business operation with an operating budget of over $12.5 billion. So it's the higher end of the health story right there. 9 minutes to 10.